final project for this course will be a trifold brochure created in InDesign with the topic of a kayak tour promotion. So I have a sample of that brochure page for you, and this video is going to talk about image preparation for that project, specifically how to select and resize images for use in this InDesign brochure. So you see the InDesign page here. This is a sample that I have created, and by the way, if you hit the W key, it goes into a nice preview mode so you can see what it would look like printed. And this is the working mode. Now, while it's possible to bring in large images and resize them down in InDesign, it's really a best practice to get your imagery, your photographs or your graphics, approximately the size that you'll need them before you bring them into InDesign. It just makes for a leaner and cleaner file. So I'm going to talk about resizing images and making sure that you have good quality on your imagery. This photograph here of the motorized kayak, you can see that it's about 4 inches wide because I have my rulers showing on the InDesign page. And by the way, if you don't see them, you need to just go up to your view menu and make sure that rulers are showing. It's generally a good idea to have them showing so you get an idea of sizing. So this image is about 4 inches wide. If I were to go into Photoshop with this image and resize it to be between 4 and 5 inches, that would be fine for me. So I'm going to demonstrate with a Photoshop file of an iguana that I took a picture of down in St. Thomas, and I really like the textures on this. And I can see, again, because I have my rulers showing, and I'm in Photoshop now, and if you want to turn your rulers on, you just go to the view menu and make sure rulers is checked. It's a great idea to have them showing when you're resizing images. This is very wide. This is over 19 inches wide and it's over 14 inches tall. So I know that if I wanted to replace that image in the brochure with this one, I've got plenty to work with and I can afford to make it a nice high resolution. So in Photoshop, and I know you can't see this, but you go to the image drop-down menu and you choose image size. And when you do, you get this important image sizing menu. And you may have worked with this a little bit before and you may have seen other resolution videos in other courses, but this is great information to review and to help understand. It can be a little tricky at first because of the way this menu is set up, but here is a good way to hopefully understand how to work with images and resolution. This resample box here, when it is not checked, you'll notice that the width, the height, and the resolution of the image are all locked together. They're all interdependent. And this tells me that this photo, just as is 19.2 by 14.4. It's not super high resolution, it's 180, okay? And this happens to be the native format that my digital camera gives me images in. They're really large, but they're kind of low to medium resolution. Because this is so large, I can afford, with this resample box not checked, I can afford to take this up to 300, which is a good print resolution. But notice what happens. When I do that, I sacrifice size. Now this is going to become smaller, almost 11.5 by 8.6. That's certainly fine for my uses. I can live with that. If I were to hit OK right now, you wouldn't see this image change, but you would see the rulers change. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. You see now the rulers have switched to it's 11.5 and it's about 8.5. So it's smaller, but now this is a nice print quality. Okay, so it is possible to go to a higher resolution if you have a large image, but your image will get smaller. You have to sacrifice something, okay? It is not possible to go to a higher resolution and keep a large size with a pixel-based bitmap image. There's just only so much information that the image has. So in this case, I've got plenty of room to work with. I'm at 300 and I'm really still pretty large. I actually want to take this down to 4 inches wide. So here is where I check the resample image. When I check that box, you'll notice that the resolution now is not tied to the width and the height. This means that I can change the size of my image and it will still be at 300. Now, this is a little tricky because while you physically could type in a larger number and the resolution would say it was 300 ppi, it really wouldn't be, and that's a little bit of a confusion. You can tell it to be 30 inches wide, but it really wouldn't look good printed out. You can, however, go smaller and it will look really good. Okay, so we just want to go to 4 inches here, and because these are tied together, the height goes down proportionally to 3 inches. So I'm going to end up here with a 4x3 image at 300 ppi, and that's really great, perfect for my brochure. So when I hit OK, you can see now the image has physically gotten smaller. I'm going to zoom in here. And you can see on the rulers that they've changed to reflect the size. So that's why it's important or helpful to have rulers showing and always check and see exactly what you're working with here. So now this is an important piece. I've resized this image. It's at a great resolution. It's a good size. I don't want to overwrite my original large file, so it's very important to go File, Save As, and I know you can't see that, but if you just hit Save, you would overwrite your image. You don't want to do that. So whenever possible, Save As to give yourself the option. So I'm going to call this Iguana Small. Also very important to know where you're saving your files. So I usually save mine to my desktop, so I know where they are. I'm going to move it in just a second though. It was a JPEG. I want to keep it as a JPEG, so I make sure that everything is the way I want it to be. When you hit save with a JPEG, you do get this options box. Anything between 9 and the maximum of 12 is fine. I usually stick to 9. This isn't a resolution thing, it's image options, and I'm not quite sure what it means, but I generally err on the side of caution and go between 9 and 12. Hit OK, and now on my desktop I have this file, Iguana Small. Now the next thing I want to cover is very important for working in InDesign. InDesign uses linked images. When you place an image into InDesign, it is not embedded in there. You can embed it, but for our purposes we're going to link them, which means you want to keep the original image in the same place with the InDesign folder. InDesign file rather. So I just made a new folder here, and I'm going to call it Kayak Brochure, and I like to put the date or an approximation of the date on it. It helps me to know when I created things. So I've made a folder for this, and in this folder I put this image. Okay, and I do this even before I've begun my InDesign file. Okay, I gather all the assets that I'm going to use, all of the photos, I resize them to approximately what I need, I gather all my graphics, and then I make my new InDesign file. Okay, and when you do that, you start pulling in all of the images into your InDesign file, and they stay in the same folder as the InDesign file, and everything is linked together. So this whole file here, this whole folder becomes your project, and that is the one that you would take with you if you were going to have it printed. And so it's really important, like I said, in InDesign, just to keep things together. So I hope this has been a helpful overview with researching and resizing photos. The more you work with resizing and resolution in Photoshop, the clearer things will be, and it will make your life a lot easier when you're doing your project for your brochure. Thanks.